Hello guys, welcome to Rebuild Academy. My name is Adil Momin and I welcome you to the third part of the series From Virus to Vaccine, Let's Fight Infodemic. I hope you all are doing well fighting pandemic as well as infodemic. But before we begin, let me tell you few very important things. It is extremely important and highly recommended to watch this series in order. Only then you will get a complete idea and a clear picture of every concept involved. The link is given in the description. Now let's begin. In the previous video, we talked about DNA, RNA and their function. We also discussed cell cycle and different stages of cell cycle, after which we learn about mutations, why they happen and what are different types of mutation. Today we are going to start our discussion with respiratory system and learn about different organs involved in respiration and their functioning, after which we will explore the concept of health and try to cover some important terms related to health that you frequently encounter. Following this, we will talk about diseases and different types of diseases. Then comes infectious diseases. We will learn what they are and how they are classified. Okay, then let's begin. Now let's start exploring the respiratory system. So, the respiratory system is a group of organs and tissues that help us breathe. But do you know why we breathe? We breathe because we require oxygen. When we eat food, our body converts it into glucose. Glucose is like fuel. To burn this fuel, we require oxygen, and we get this oxygen through the air by breathing. So, glucose is broken down in presence of oxygen into energy, carbon dioxide and water. Now, many people consider breathing and respiration are same, but they are different. Breathing is an activity of inhalation and exhalation, whereas respiration is the process of obtaining energy from glucose with the help of oxygen. Clear? Now, respiration can be divided into three phases: external respiration, internal respiration and cellular respiration. In external respiration, gaseous exchange takes place in the nasal area, so breathing is nothing but external respiration, right? In the case of internal respiration, gaseous exchange takes place in the lungs, and in cellular respiration, breakdown of glucose in the cells happen. Now, let's try to explore different parts of the respiratory system. The group of organs involved in respiration is called as respiratory tract. This image shows the respiratory tract. The respiratory tract is divided into two parts as upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. Okay, the upper respiratory tract consists of the nasal cavity, pharynx and larynx. Let's study the nasal cavity in detail. The nasal cavity consists of three regions. The first region is called as vestibule region. The vestibule region has a lining of mucus which helps trap any foreign particle which enters inhaled air, thus provides defense from harmful particles. The next region following this is the respiratory region. This region serves many purposes. Most importantly is warms the air, bringing it at normal temperature. Then it moistens it and makes it suitable for the body. And then it pushes some air to the third region of the nasal cavity and the remaining air down the respiratory tract. The third region is called as olfactory region, which contains highly sensitive cells. These cells sends the signal to the brain and help it identify the smell. After the nasal cavity comes the pharynx. It's a common connection between the respiratory and digestive tract. The pharynx does the most crucial task of ensuring that food goes to the food pipe known as esophagus and not in the respiratory tract. It performs this task with the help of epiglottis. Epiglottis acts like a door. It closes when the food enters through the mouth, and once it passes to the food pipe, it returns to its original position, bringing the respiratory tract back to function. This is the reason you can't breathe while swallowing the food. Now next on the list is larynx, last part of the upper respiratory tract, also known as the voice box. As the name suggests, Larynx is responsible for the production of sound. The larynx is a small box-like structure, but in adults, it protrudes and appears as a bulging structure in the throat called Adam's apple. So this concludes the upper respiratory tract. Now let's talk about lower respiratory tract. As the air travels down the respiratory tract, it passes through many junctions. The first junction is known as trachea, also called as windpipe. It is a cylindrical shaped pipe. The trachea is a conducting zone in the respiratory tract. It ensures low resistance for airflow and protect the respiratory surface from accumulation of foreign particles. The next junction after the trachea is bronchus. It acts as entry point into the lungs. It is divided into two main branches called as right main bronchus and left main bronchus. Inside the lungs, the bronchus further gets divided into bronchioles. Bronchioles are small root-like structures that are present inside the lungs. Bronchioles are connected to tiny sac-like structures called alveoli. Alveoli are basic units of respiratory system. The actual exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place in alveoli. The single spherical ball-like structure is called an alveolus. It is interesting to note that many spherical shaped alveolus effectively increases the total surface area of single alveoli, thus making the gaseous exchange more effective. The alveolus is supplied with a large number of capillaries. They are composed of a thin, single-celled membrane. These extremely thin membranes help in oxygen exchange between alveolus and red blood cells passing through capillaries. When air enters the alveolus, oxygen in it is transferred to RBCs through diffusion. Similarly, the carbon dioxide brought by RBCs is transferred to the air in alveolus by diffusion, and this carbon dioxide travels back through the respiratory tract and leaves through the nasal cavity. This is how gaseous exchange occurs in each alveolus, and this is how the complete respiratory system works, right? There is another important organ called as diaphragm. It is located below the lungs. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped sheet of muscles that separates the chest from the abdomen. Upon inhalation, the diaphragm contracts and flattens, and the chest cavity enlarges. This contraction creates a vacuum which pulls the air into the lungs. Upon exhalation, the diaphragm relaxes and returns to its dome shape, and the air is forced out of lungs. I just want to add an extra point here. There is a connected system of hollow cavities in the skull called sinuses. Your cheekbones hold your largest sinuses. The lower center of your forehead is where your frontal sinuses are located. The sinuses effectively lighten the skull and also improve our voices. But their main function is to produce a mucus that moisturizes the inside of the nose. This mucus layer protects the nose from pollutants, microorganisms, dust and dirt. So, this was all about respiratory system. Now let's start discussing health. What is health? According to the widely accepted definition, health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. This definition is contrary to the popular belief that health is an absence of disease. Health has three aspects: physical health, mental health, and social health. You are physically healthy when all your organs are normally functioning and you can carry out physical activities. Your mental health and social well-being can be assessed by your relationships, thoughts, and feelings. So by considering all these factors together, your complete health status can be determined. Right? Now, let's discuss some of the frequently used terms related to health. One of the most generic terms is condition. For example, when you go to the hospital to see someone, you ask about the condition of patient. So condition represents the state of health. Next one is symptoms. Symptoms are indications that suggest that something is wrong somewhere. Symptoms can be fever, cough, headache, muscle pain, fatigue, or skin rash. A syndrome is usually a group of symptoms that occur together consistently. Syndrome indicates an abnormal condition, but we don't know the cause of this condition. For example, irritable bowel syndrome. The key symptoms are diarrhea, constipation, bloating, belly discomfort, but the exact cause of these is unknown. Next comes the disease. The disease is an abnormal condition with some characteristic symptoms, and in the case of disease, we know the cause of condition. For example, the common cold is a disease, runny nose, cough, sneezing are some of its characteristic symptoms, and common cold is caused due to viruses, right? Disorder represents disruption, disturbances, and irregularities in the function of the body. They are particularly used for mental health. For example, depression, anxiety, dementia, schizophrenia are mental disorders. I just want to point out here that mental health is one of the most neglected health topics in society. There is a great need for awareness regarding mental health, especially in developing countries. Now, illness represents any abnormal condition. Next comes diagnosis. It is the art of identifying disease through its symptoms. I am deliberately saying it's an art because it can't be learned through only books. Therefore, the practice is such an integral part of medical profession. There are various methods of diagnosis, like taking medical history, physical examination, laboratory tests. Another important terms are morbidity and mortality. They are often confusing. Morbidity refers to the state of having a specific disease. It often refers to a long-lasting illness. Some examples of common morbidities include diabetes, hypertension, heart diseases, cancer, anxiety and depression. You may have also come across a term that's related to morbidity. It's called comorbidity. It means that you have more than one illness or morbidity at the same time. Depending on the condition, some comorbidities may have more common than others. For example, according to the CDC, arthritis is often associated with other comorbid conditions like obesity and heart diseases. Mortality refers to the number of deaths that have occurred due to a specific illness. Mortality is often expressed in the form of mortality rate. This is the number of deaths due to an illness divided by the total population at that time. For example, if in 1 year 50 heart attack deaths occurred within a population of 40,000, to determine the mortality rate, you divide 50 by 40,000. The mortality rate is often expressed in units per 100,000 people. So in the above example, the mortality rate due to heart attack would be 125 deaths per 100,000 people for that year. So this was about health and related terms. Now let's talk about disease. Diseases can be classified as infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are caused by microorganisms. We have discussed about microorganisms in our previous video, right? Examples of infectious diseases are cholera, chickenpox, and malaria. Don't worry, we will discuss infectious diseases in detail. Non-infectious diseases can be caused by multiple reasons. Nutritional deficiency or excess can be one of them. For example, scurvy is a disease that occurs when you have a severe lack of vitamin C in your diet. Beriberi is a disease caused by vitamin B1 deficiency. Obesity is a complex disease involving an excess amount of body fat. Non-infectious diseases can be hereditary, like Down syndrome, which is a genetic disorder causing developmental and intellectual delays. Physiological disorders, which are caused by malfunction of biological processes in the body, like diabetes, hypertension, or cancer, are also non-infectious diseases. We learned that infectious diseases are caused by microorganisms. So let's try to learn more about these microorganisms. We have some idea about these microorganisms from our previous discussion, right? So the question comes, does all microorganisms cause diseases? The answer is no. The microorganisms which cause diseases are called as pathogens. For example, certain types of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites are pathogens. On the other hand, the microorganisms which do not cause diseases are called non-pathogens. The examples are yeast, E. coli, and Rhizobium. Now, in recent times, the microorganisms are demonized. So before discussing pathogens, let's briefly go through non-pathogens, the friendly microorganisms. Some microorganisms are beneficial for humans. For example, we use yeast, which is a fungus, for bread making. Lactobacillus bacterium helps in making curd from milk. You would be surprised to know that human bodies contains 10 times more microorganisms than human cells, though they are very smaller in size. Microorganisms play a vital role in human health. E. coli bacteria, found in the intestines, helps in digestion. The human body requires vitamin K for blood clotting, and the chief source of vitamin K is bacteria in the large intestine. Similarly, we use microorganisms for treatment of diseases in the form of antibiotics and antivirals. Microorganisms are widespread in nature. Microorganisms like Azotobacter, Rhizobium, and Clostridium are called nitrogen-fixing microbes. They convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia that can be used by the plants for its growth and development. One of the prime functions of microorganisms is decomposition. Decomposition is the recycling of nutrients. The dead tissues of an organism are broken down into simple organic forms, which act as a food source for many species in an ecosystem. This is done by microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. Right? I think now you understand that all microorganisms are not evil. Some are also beneficial. Now, let's talk about pathogens and diseases caused by these pathogens. Pathogens use another organism called a host for their growth and development. So, once they attach themselves to the host and start growing or multiplying, it is called infection, and this infection causes cell damage in the host body. This cell damage causes the body to react, resulting in symptoms, which indicates the presence of disease, and it is called as infectious disease. So, infectious disease is a disease caused due to an infection, right? Infectious diseases can be classified based on what type of pathogen has caused them. Mainly there are 4 types of infections: bacterial infection, fungal infection, parasitic infection, and viral infection. Let's discuss them one by one. Bacterial infection is caused by bacteria. Bacteria comes in different shapes and sizes like spherical, rod-shaped, and spiral. They are present throughout the nature, soil, water, and the human body. Usually they are not harmful, but some bacteria cause diseases in humans. For example, pneumonia, tuberculosis, cholera, and tetanus are bacterial infections. Bacterial infections can be treated with antibiotics. A fungus is a member of eukaryotic organisms that include microorganisms such as yeast and molds, as well as the more familiar member, mushrooms. Yes, mushrooms are fungus, but they are not microorganisms. Fungi are found in soil, moist areas, and even in the human body. Examples of fungal infections are ringworms, athlete's foot, and mucormycosis, popularly known as black fungus. These fungal infections can be treated with antifungal medicines. A parasite is an organism that lives on a host organism and gets its food at the expense of its host. They can cause parasitic infections. For example, malaria is a parasitic infection caused by the Plasmodium parasite. Many people think that malaria is caused by mosquitoes, but mosquitoes are only hosts of the Plasmodium parasites. They use mosquitoes for spreading. There are specific drugs available for the treatment of parasitic infections. We have learned that viruses are not organisms, but they are pathogens because they cause diseases in organisms. Viruses are the smallest in size. It is interesting to know that viruses can infect other microorganisms like bacteria and parasites. Viruses are parasitic, that is, they require a host for their growth and development. The difference between parasite and virus is that viruses can survive outside the host, but parasite requires a host for their survival. Therefore, if a parasite is detached from its host, it will die, but the virus can live in an inactive state outside the host. Examples of viral infections are common cold, polio, chickenpox, AIDS, and rabies. The treatment of viral infections is tricky because of its very nature. You will develop more insight regarding this as we progress in this series. Treatment mostly involves relieving symptoms. Antiviral drugs are also used for the treatment of viral infections. In this way, we briefly saw 4 major types of infections, right? There are few ways in which infection can be classified. They can be classified as clinical and subclinical infections. Clinical infections are all those infections which lead to obvious observable symptoms like coughing, sneezing, headache. Examples are common cold, chickenpox. Subclinical infections are those infections that lead to few or non-obvious symptoms. Examples are dengue, polio, and typhoid. Infections can also be classified as acute and chronic infections. In acute infections, symptoms develop rapidly, like in influenza, whereas in chronic infections, symptoms develop gradually. For example, AIDS. It can take years for symptoms to appear. Infections can also be classified as local or systemic infections. Local infections remain constrained at the entry site of the pathogen, for example, ear infection and tetanus, whereas in case of systemic infection, infections spread in the body through blood. Examples are common cold and TB. So this brings us to the conclusion of today's discussion. Now quickly go through what we learned today. We started today with respiratory system and learned what is respiration, how it is different from breathing, what is internal, external, and cellular respiration. Then we talked about respiratory tract, what are the different parts involved, what are their respective functions, also how the complete respiration process takes place in the respiratory system, starting from nasal cavity till gaseous exchange in the alveoli, and lastly we learned about sinuses. Following this, we move to the topic of health. We learned that health has 3 aspects like physical, mental, and social well-being. Then we discussed few frequently encountered terms like symptoms, syndrome, disease, disorder, illness, and diagnosis. We also briefly went through the concepts of morbidity, comorbidity, mortality, and mortality rate. After this, we saw what infectious and non-infectious diseases are, what are pathogen and non-pathogens. We also learned about different beneficial microorganisms, what are their role in nature. And lastly, we discussed infection and infectious diseases, types of infections as bacterial, fungal, parasitic, and viral. And we ended our today's discussion with the concepts of clinical and subclinical infections, acute and chronic infections, also local and systemic infections. In the upcoming video, we will be talking about some of the very crucial concepts like chain of infection, types of infection, and zoonosis. So make sure you subscribe the channel and press the bell icon for timely notification. If you enjoyed and learned something from this video, then make sure that you like the video and share it with others so that we all work together and battle the infodemic. That's all for now. We will meet in upcoming video. Stay safe, stay connected.